Hi there, my name is Nate Pike. I was the Alberta Party candidate for Calgary Northeast in the last provincial election. Before any of you jump on your keyboards and start leaving comments, yeah, I know I didn't win. But there's a couple of things that I have to sort of figure out for myself coming out of this election. One of the things that I ran on was the fact that I really wanted to make sure that our communities got a voice that was going to elevate issues for them and that was actually going to try to make sure that our communities do get a bit of a voice. There were over 1,700 people in this election who felt like I should be the guy to do that. And I put myself up to do that, and I have a hard time just walking away from that. So part of this is me trying to figure out how I'm going to do that best. The second piece of it is one of the things that politicians seem to do after they lose an election is get some sort of media platform thing going. 770 hasn't called me yet for some reason, don't know why. So I'm kind of have to do my own thing. So this is going to be probably every 2 or 3 weeks, going to be doing some videos where we talk about some of the bigger issues that are happening inside of the province. And I'm going to try to make some of the political issues that we're seeing go on in the legislature and around the province a little easier to understand, because a lot of stuff that's going on is really confusing and there's a lot of different conflicting pieces of information going on. We've got a tentative working title for this thing. It's going to be called The Breakdown. And this week we're going to try to talk about a bunch of different things. If you take a look around, what you'll see from me right now is I'm actually standing in the middle of the field where our high school is supposed to be built. And a big part of the reason for that is because one of the things that all of the candidates promised is that this high school would get built. Well, it's been roughly a month since the last election, and as you can see, no high school being built yet. So I'm going to keep filming here until we do get our high school built. Now, we've got a bunch of different issues that we want to talk about, but the first one that I want to talk about is Bill 12, or the Turn Off the Taps bill. This was a bill that Jason Kenney got a lot of mileage out of during the election, where he was talking about how when he first came into power, in the very first hour, he would get it proclaimed. Well, when he actually held his first caucus meeting, it took him a little bit more than an hour, but after social media called him out on how long it was taking, he and his caucus eventually did proclaim it. Now, this is where understanding how a bill becomes law is really, really important. So this bill was actually introduced in April of last year, and it was introduced by the NDP in response to the BC Premier's claims that he was going to do everything that he could to try to stop TMX pipeline from being built. Now, what happened there is the NDP crafted some laws that they knew were super high risk, and they knew were very likely to get challenged in court. So they had that bill go all the way through. It got approval in the legislature, but they stopped just short of proclaiming it into law, because they knew as soon as they proclaimed it into law, the government would have to defend a constitutional challenge from BC that would be launched immediately. So if they wanted to get any mileage out of the bill, they had to proclaim it and then pretty much immediately turn off the taps. At the time, Jason Kenney made a big deal issue about how it made no sense whatsoever to produce a bill like this and then not immediately act on it. So to be really clear, the whole reason why the NDP didn't proclaim it into law and immediately use it is because they didn't want to have to use it right away. They wanted to go the road of negotiation first. This was something that Jason Kenney made a heck of a lot of fun of them out of. And when he was campaigning, he made a big point of the fact that as soon as he got elected, he'd proclaim it. On April 30th, after he had his first caucus meeting, he didn't announce that he proclaimed it, and he got a whole bunch of flack on social media. Shortly after, he did announce that he proclaimed it, but he immediately followed it up by stating that he wasn't immediately going to be using the bill. And here's a clip of that.
I underscored for the Premier, it is not our intention to use the powers in this legislation at this point. When you're in a game of poker, you don't show the other folks around the table what your high card is. You don't play that high card on the first hand. And so we're going to play the long game here.
Again, one of the biggest concerns that's been brought forward, and was a big topic of conversation during the election, is whether or not Bill 12, or the Turn Off the Taps bill, was even constitutionally viable. There were constitutional experts, there were constitutional lawyers who were saying all the way through the election campaign that this was not something that was going to be able to withstand a challenge in court. So with all of that information out there, one would think that upon coming into office, Jason Kenney and the UCP would do the due diligence to actually go ahead and get an informed legal opinion before they went ahead and proclaimed this bill into law. But when Jason Kenney was asked about it, here's what he had to say.
Before Cabinet voted yesterday, did you get any type of legal opinion that Bill 12 would actually survive a constitutional challenge?
I have not yet received and read a legal opinion. I have been briefed by officials, and those are the same officials that advised the last government that wrote this legislation. So we're taking the same legal advice that the NDP received.
So Darren Billis, when we spoke with the media yesterday, said that Ms. Notley, I guess on the way out the door, told you that you shouldn't do this. She didn't have any kind of opinion or any better advice for you?
Well, I'm first of all,
So ultimately, the irony of the whole Bill 12 situation is that it has been proclaimed into law. BC has already lodged a complaint, and they're just working to get an injunction against Bill 12. But ultimately, the taps haven't been turned off, and Jason Kenney has openly come out and said that he's not going to use the Turn Off the Taps bill to do the job that it's been designed to do in the way that was designed to do it. At the end of the day, the whole Bill 12 Turn Off the Taps thing, it's just political theater.